Reflections, refreshing you. And today's refreshing word comes from the book of Second Peter. That's Second Peter from verses 4 to 10 and Psalm 84 verse 10. So we can take a look at it. And of course, if you find the video, yes, it is on. It's the Breath of Heaven Reflections. Now, 2 Peter 2 verse 4 says, "For if God did not spare angels when they sinned, but sent them to hell, putting them in chain of darkness, to be held for judgment, if he did not spare the ancient world when he brought the flood on its ungodly people, but protected Noah, a preacher of righteousness, and 7 others, if he condemned the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah by burning them to ashes and made them an example of what is going to happen to the ungodly, and if he rescued Lot, a righteous man who was distressed by the depraved conduct of the lawless, for that righteous man living among them day after day was tormented in his righteous soul by the lawless deeds he saw and heard. If this is so, then the Lord knows how to rescue the godly from trials and to hold the unrighteous for punishment on the day of judgment. This is especially true of those who follow the corrupt desire of the flesh and despise authority." Now in Psalm 84 verse 10, "Better is one day in your courts than 1,000 elsewhere. I would rather be a doorkeeper in the house of my God than dwell in the tents of the wicked." And so the word of God is encouraging us tonight and helping us to see that there are those people whom the word or whom the Lord saw as being right. And we know that the just shall live by faith. So in your faith, you follow the ways of the Lord in such a way that you will shun evil, in such a way that you do not get into that place where you are tormented like Lot was. And of course, the story of Lot is it's a teaching story in and of itself, because you see how he chose the greener path, and Abraham went to the path that wasn't so promising, but because God was with him, he was able to stay in a good place. This teaches us that where God is, sometimes the place of righteousness might seem as the place where there is no life. The place where God is might appear as though, in fact, there is nothing there for you, because the grass isn't greener. But you can only imagine what the psalmist is talking about here. And he says, to do doorkeeping in the house of God is much, much better than to dwell in the tents of the wicked. Because where there is wickedness, it appears good, it is attractive, it is enticing, it's alluring. It's a place where if you do not if you are the type to be swayed easily, you would easily find yourself there. But I love his conscience. He says that it is better to spend one day in the courts of God, meaning in the presence of the Lord, than where you spend thousands of days or 1,000 days elsewhere where there is no court of God. There is no righteousness. In fact, the attitude that this man wears is, I wouldn't want to know what is going on in the space of wickedness, because indeed, even in the days and the times we are living in, only God knows how much advanced wickedness has gotten. And there are times when the children of God are pressured or lured to even try and keep up with the latest gossip in town. But we have to get to the place of conviction where we say, we might seem as we are the ones who are left behind when everyone else is following certain trends. But you see, if I can dwell just one day in the courts of God, where there is righteousness, where there is all that I need, where God is, I'm better off than somebody who spends 1,000 elsewhere. That elsewhere is very intentional, because the writer wants to paint a contrast between the presence of God and where there isn't. Therefore, it doesn't matter what everyone is buzzing about. It doesn't matter what's going on, maybe the latest headlines, but as long as I am in the presence of God, in the house of my God, I'm good. If there is, I don't know what, in the other side, I will not even want to know, because that stuff is not edifying. That stuff is not good. Therefore, may God help us to be like Lot, the righteous man. Lot found himself in the middle of so much that was corruption, but God commends him through this letter that Peter wrote and says that he was righteous. And indeed, he made it out of Sodom and Gomorrah when God sent his judgment. He made it out, Therefore, even now, maybe you might be saying, but maybe where I work, maybe where I live and all that. For as long as God is with you, you shall also make it out. Because God always will send his judgment to those whose hearts are wicked, to those who espouse such things. Their inclination is pure evil. Just like Sodom and Gomorrah was judged, so will the judgment of God overtake such people and such communities where unrighteousness thrives. But God is faithful in such a way that even though Lot was right in the middle, God, before he sent his judgment, ensured that he was also able to escape. Isn't it right? God is faithful. So may the Lord truly help us so that we would not even want to associate. And sometimes when you behave that way, or maybe when you carry such a conviction, you might be labeled as, somebody who is just unrealistic, isn't this the way of life? Are you not human? Why are you living in heaven? Those things. But your mind is made up that I will not dwell for a second in the tents of wickedness. So may the Lord help us to be able to dwell instead in his presence. For where he is, there is life. For where he is, there is peace.